My name is Jackie Yang. I am coordinator of the Housing Affordability Coalition. And we are delighted to welcome you to this first seniors webinar. We will just very briefly, an overview, we'll be talking about some of the demographic trends related to seniors in the county. We have a video that we are launching tonight, created by a very special senior who has been very gracious in helping us at least tell her story. We're going to ask, what about your situations going forward? We'll hear from about age-friendly Howard, look at some of the income and rent challenges and the origins and some solutions that the coalition is looking at. And then we're going to try to interest you in getting involved with the coalition and with age-friendly Howard, and there'll be time for an exchange and conversation. So we'll have a couple of polls along the way. So that's just an overview of our evening. So a little bit about the coalition. We were founded, if that's the right term, it started around a cafe table in 2018, when there were 3 or 4 of us gathered, and we were concerned about the divisiveness in the community, particularly as it was pitting housing against education. And so we formed to try to bring about good conversation about solutions. We happen to believe that housing and education and housing, a whole lot of other things that need to happen in the county, that the discussion of affordable housing absolutely needed to be elevated. So that's where we started. We are absolutely grassroots. We are not an incorporated nonprofit. We're all volunteer. And since that coffee clutch 4 years ago, we now have 186 individuals and over 40 organizations who have joined the coalition to help raise the voice in support of affordable housing here in Howard. Our goals are to provide fact-based education and to inform and to engage and stimulate the community to be very active to help us get results that help us increase the numbers of affordable housing in the county. So just to provide a bit of background and demographic information, and many of you know this, but we feel it's important to kind of reinforce the data and bring you the current data as best we know it, that there are currently over 49,000 seniors over age 65, 15% of our population in the county right now. And as we all know, that's increasing as we go along, that 42,000 number is going to grow to be 71,000. So more than 22,000 more by 2030. That's pretty rapid. And that 9,700 of us will be 85 and older. So that's double. 7,000 senior females will be living alone, and 2,000 senior males will be living alone in 2030. So this is an increasingly important conversation, important to make sure that our leaders in the county absolutely understand that this is a situation that's not going away and has to be addressed. So these are supposed to be the golden years for us seniors. However, there's no guarantee. There is no guarantee that that's going to happen, as we all know. Things change, things happen.
Meet Vicki, an older adult who is insecurely housed in Howard County. She's not alone. 1 in 4 older adults in Howard earns low income. That's over 14,000 people. Nearly half of them have a disability. And for people who rely on pensions, often those don't cover the rent. Older adults have 2 critical housing challenges. First, affordability. We have a shortage of nearly 4,000 affordable homes for older adults who earn low income. And accessibility. ADA-compliant homes are extremely scarce.
My name is Vicki Miles, and I've been a Howard County resident for over 35 years. I had heard about Howard County and knew about Newtown and Columbia and James Rouse's vision, and I thought it'd be a fantastic place to raise children, and I wanted to live here. So I came here, and I've been here ever since. When I moved to Columbia, I was a single mom with 4 children. I taught school. I managed to buy a house. My children were involved in a lot of sports, and so I was the swim team mom and the neighborhood mom. I loved tutoring the kids after school with homework and giving kids rides to baseball practice, and I really enjoyed all those things. I taught at Wild Lake High School, and later I worked as a home hospital teacher, teaching children that had physical or mental disability or issues. I served as the president of my homeowners association. And at one time I wound up on the front of the Columbia Flyer because of my efforts in trying to make improvements in our community. I've always wanted to live in a true community, and I feel like Columbia has offered that and Howard County has offered that. I like living around all ages of people. I like living around all types of people. That just makes life interesting, and it also teaches empathy, and it teaches so many important life lessons. All right. I had a health crisis about 6 years ago, and my house just didn't work for me anymore because there were too many steps inside the house, too many steps outside the house. Luckily, I was able to sell my house, but it didn't give me enough cash to pay outright for another home, a smaller home that was more accessible. So I wound up having to try to find something to rent, and that was really difficult in Howard County. The rents were very expensive. I was able to find a condo that was somewhat accessible. Luckily, I do have some savings that I have from the sale of my home that I tap into monthly in order to pay my bills, but I don't believe I'll be able to stay here much longer because at some point I may be back in a wheelchair all the time, and if that's the case, I'll need a place that's more accessible. When I was a single parent and first moved to Howard County, having a home was probably the most important thing for me and for my children. I felt like if I could have a home, provide that for my children, everything was possible. Because I did manage to have that, I could work on other things, make sure that my children had good education, were physically well, socially well. I could take care of all their other needs, but you had to have the home. I mean, in a lot of ways, I feel very lucky to have raised my children and lived here in Howard County. There are so many wonderful things about it, and my children thank me all the time for having moved here, and we've had a wonderful life here, and I'd like to stay here and see my grandchildren grow up here, and I still feel like I have a lot to offer the community, and I hope that I'll be able to stay here for the future.
Older adults like Vicki need better housing options. Let your county council know using the email shown here.
Hi, this is Dana Soar. Thank you everybody for being here. I've watched that video a number of times, and it always makes me emotional. We're so grateful that Vicki was willing to share her story and be so revealing and vulnerable in the process. We're just so grateful for her participation. Thank you so much, Vicki. Vicki is, besides being a wonderful human being, she's a great illustration of the kind of the progression that seniors go through. In Howard County, by far the majority of seniors are homeowners. So the progression for most starts right here with home ownership. But then, life happens, life events happen. Father time is merciless, as I think most of us have discovered. And, we lose physical capacity. Maybe we have actually a disability at some point, perhaps lose a partner, lose some essential income. And for many, there's an erosion of savings and a general erosion of financial capacity along the way. And then that leads to the question of what's next? What is possible next, given my capabilities, my resources, my community, my family? Do I age in place? Is it time to downsize? Should I rent? Can I rent? Maybe family can make a room for me, or maybe I should move into some other kind of setting, like a continuing care retirement community. So that's kind of a fairly typical progression for seniors in Howard County. And so just given that picture, I want to turn the microphone over to Fran Lepresti, who is the chair of the housing work group of Age Friendly Howard County. She'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. She is a retired IT executive. She's also an advocate for seniors and animals too, she wants you to know.
Thank you, Dana. I had to put the animals in there. It's one of the things I did when I retired, was to start fostering cats. And I've done more than 100 cats so far.
Wow.
So let me tell you a little bit about Age Friendly. First of all, it's an AARP national construct, but the county has sponsored this effort. And it started in 2019, right before the pandemic. We had one meeting, and then we never saw each other again. We did everything by Zoom. And it was hundreds of volunteers and county employees. And we developed this action plan, which you see on your screen over there. And the purpose is that Howard County should be a livable community and a great place to grow up and to grow older. So as Vicki was telling you, a great place for her to come to work, to raise her children, and she hopes to stay here as a senior. So our new mission is to provide Howard County to feel safe, respected, and connected to their community at all stages of life. So in doing this, there are, next, Dana, there are 8 domains of livability. This comes actually from the World Health Organization. And although there are 8, we're going to talk about housing. But as you know, where you live, how you get there, is there health care, plus those others are important. I chair the housing work group for the implementation phase. So let's talk about what are some of the things we're grappling with. There's this action plan, and now we got to get where the rubber meets the road. Who should do some of these things? How should it be done? Should the county support it? Should it be done by grants? How should it be done? So if you want to age in place in the home you're in now, what changes might you need to make? Well, who can do the work? Are there vetted contractors who know how to do this work? Can I even afford to do the work? And then let's say you decide, no, my house is just not going to do it, but I want to age in the community. I'd like to stay in Howard County. So that one is Dana. Okay, there it is. Okay, where can I downsize with less maintenance and fewer stairs? Or if I have vision problems, something that's accessible to me. Is it close to amenities as I may be giving up driving? And again, can I afford it? These are some of the questions we're coming up with, as well as how can home sharing play a role? How about things like villages where neighbors help neighbors? Can ADUs be part of our future in Howard County? These are the things we're doing in age friendly. So in summary, I just want to say that we're focused on continuing to develop our community as a great place to grow up. It's happening right now. Each of these domains have work groups. It is supported by the county, and your help is needed to spread awareness. People who would like to work on this over the next 18 months. And I'd like you to join as well. And if you would, there's an email at the bottom. It says agefriendly@howardcountymaryland.gov. And if you just want to look at the report, just check it out. Just type in on your in Google, Age Friendly Howard County, and the site will come up and you can read that report. It's very readable. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Fran. So let's just briefly just return to that progression that we walked through a minute or two ago, the progression from home ownership, again, which is typical for the majority of seniors in Howard County, dealing with life events, and then what comes next. Over the years, the data that we get from our community in terms of housing indicators and income and impacts of housing costs have gotten better and better and better. And as the data is showing, there's a concerning element here in this last stage of the progression related to senior renters who are earning low or very low income and trying to do all of those things that Fran talked about, remain in the community, in the face, though, of extremely high, punitively high housing costs. So let me turn it over to Paul Casey, who is a member of the steering committee of the Housing Affordability Coalition. Paul is a retired housing attorney. You wouldn't know he's retired because it's hard to get him on the phone with all the meetings and travel that he's doing. He's also a longtime advocate for affordable housing, and he is one of the commissioners of the Howard County Housing Commission. They manage or administer all of the housing choice vouchers in Howard County. They also are one of the largest, if not the largest, a nonprofit developer of affordable housing in the community. So Paul, take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Dana. And it's really a privilege to speak this evening and to share with everyone here the nature of this, what I consider to be a crisis. I mean, it is possible for us when you look at all the data to say, well, you know, there are so many homeowners that are seniors and they're generally okay, and maybe they'll be able to be all right. But the problem is that as we age, as Dana's explained, as Vicki explained in her passionate video, that we don't know what's going to happen to us. And we can all see the possibilities that we could end up in that last category where we need to find affordable housing that we can rent. And it does impact a large number of people in Howard County. So I think we'd like, first of all, to get a picture of what it is with regard to our rental housing in Howard County for seniors. So currently, as you remember from the very beginning, when we had that pie chart, we have roughly 49,000 Howard County seniors now. That number is going to grow to 71,000 by 2030. Now, of that number, roughly today, 6,700 are senior renters, of which 3,000 earn low income and 1,700 very low income. What I'd like to note, though, is that number, just like the overall number of those that are aging, is also growing, because although the 6,700, that 6,700 number actually was calculated in 2018 in the Howard County Rental Survey, and the 22 Howard County Rental Survey show that it's 6,900 and growing. So underscore the fact that the number of people who are in that third category that Dana was talking about is a growing number. And the difficulty that we face is, how can that increasing number of people who are renting or who are facing renting afford it? And first we need to understand what the nature of the income limitations are. And low income is generally determined to be 60% of area median. And in Howard County, that means somebody who earns between $26,000 and $52,000 if they're one person. And actually, as a senior, it's not earning usually. It's maybe Social Security, followed by maybe a pension or maybe a job on the side. And then if you're a household of two, the numbers are 30 to 60,000. But if you're very low income, that's 30% of area median. And that's 26,000 if you're a household of one and below, and 30,000 if you're a household of two or below. And those numbers are significant because when we look at the next slide, we see how significant this issue is, because currently the low-income households in need for seniors are roughly 3,000. And the rental supply, the number of rental units that are available for people at that income level in Howard County is roughly 900. which of course leaves a shortage of 2,100 units, which means people are currently renting, but paying more than the 30% of their income for rent. And actually, it's also worth noting that in the rental surveys which show these numbers, the rental survey calculates the amount that a household that's senior should be able to afford to pay for housing is 40% of their income, which I will tell you, it's my opinion. I think it should be 30. Someone who's a senior has other costs, which maybe they don't have children in the house, but they have healthcare and other issues. In any case, under the current standards, we're short about 2,100 units for people who are at that 60% of median. But then there's the lower income. These are the people who, as we saw, if you're a family of two, are at 30,000 or less. And if you're one, you're 26,000 or less. And there are 1,700 renters in that category. And the number of actual very low income age restricted rentals that are guaranteed are 155, creating a shortage of 1,500 units. And this number, in my judgment, is a crisis. I mean, this means that we have 3,600, close to 3,700 families where they are paying more than they can reasonably afford for rent. That means that these families are sitting around the kitchen table and deciding, when they're spending so much money on rent, how much are they going to be able to afford for food or drugs or other needs that they may have. So the problem for people who are at the low income category and the very low income category is serious, and significantly, it's growing. It's not going away. We see the numbers of people who are aged growing over the next 10 years, and we see the number of people who are renters and our seniors growing over that period of time. And that brings us to, what are the root causes of this affordability crisis? And this may seem like an oversimplification, but I think it's important to grasp it. The problem really becomes serious because our county is building fewer homes than needed. And the result is that when you have a housing shortage, the price of housing to purchase, the price of housing to rent goes up. Now, if you look at the statistics on the left-hand side of that slide, you know that currently we have a 20,000 unit housing shortfall. That means we currently need 20,000 units that we don't have in this county. And based on the expected economic growth and job needs, the Housing Opportunities Master Plan and the HOCO by Design, the new general plan study, expected 31,000 more units would be needed, which means overall by 2040, unless we do something, we may have a shortage of up to 50,000. Now, here's something that's kind of like an insight into how that problem gets to be so serious. And that is how many units are actually built every year in Howard County. And this is not on the slide, but what's significant to note is that over the past decade, roughly, we've been building an average of about 1,500 units, roughly 1,500 units a year. That number, however, over the past 3 years has declined to about 1,300 units a year. And last year, I was stunned. Do you know how many units we actually built of housing in Howard County in 2022? 753. So the crisis is getting worse, not better. Now, we see, when you look at the next part of the slide, that this shortage of housing drives up the price. It's the law of supply and demand. And on the for sale side, we've come to a stage where in 2023, just in February, the median price for a single family home in Howard County was $500,000. And I suspect any senior that thinks they're going to sell and be able to downsize to something more affordable may have a difficult time. They may need to be able to go into a rental unit, just as Vicky explained in her situation, well, there are the median rents currently in Howard County. For 1 bedroom, it's about $1,500. For 2 bedroom, we're talking about going on $1,900, and for 3 bedroom, $2,500. Assuming that most seniors would probably go for a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, then we're talking about spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $18,000 to $22,000 for rent, which, if you are a low income person, is well more than half of your income. And it reminds you of the difficulty that we could all face if because of circumstances we can't control. So the takeaway from this slide is Howard County generally, over the past years of development, has focused on single family development in larger lots, but the amount of land we can build on is going down. We have to be able to find ways to address the shortage of housing. We have a current shortage of 20,000, an expected increased number of 31,000. And with all this shortage, the price of housing is going up and the price of renting is going up. So how do we address the crisis? Well, the slide here sends a very important message, which is we need to have more housing in Howard County. Now, housing that is quality housing, desirable housing, affordable housing, and that can be done. The County Council this coming year will look at the general plan, which will be in place for the next 10 years. And HOCO by Design was the planning process, which some of you may have heard of, and it's started roughly 2.5 years ago, and has been through literally hundreds of meetings and comments. And just this past month, the planning board recommended that the HOCO by Design go to the council for its consideration. And when it went to the council, with a recommendation that we have 2,000 units a year, and that we have affordable units, and the affordable units should be at a significant number. The discussion at the planning board was roughly 500 units or 25%. Now, what's significant to keep in mind is that originally HOCO by Design called for only about 1,300 to 1,400 units a year. And you can tell from the numbers we showed you, that's not going to address the problem. 2,000 units a year, that may, I think, make a significant impact, at least helping us to get where we need to be. And so the first thing is we need to be able to find ways to develop more housing, housing of choice, housing that's affordable. And there are several things we can do to get there. It's doable. And that will have the impact of reducing the costs overall. So let's look at some of the things we can do to address the crisis. The first one, and this is part of the HOCO by Design, develop more mixed-use activity centers. The picture you see there is actually of Meriwether in downtown Columbia. And there are some units of affordable housing in those buildings. There are some that have Section 8 vouchers that are operated by the commission, but not enough. We could use more. But the ability to develop in mixed-use activity centers means that, as we said earlier, seniors have the ability then to live near amenities like grocery stores and pharmacies, where they can get access to things that they need. We prefer to have walkable areas where they can take advantage of retail activity. So that's the first thing. And although downtown Columbia may be the most dramatic example of a mixed-use activity center, there are others in the neighborhoods in Columbia. And there are also some rural crossroads where there are some limited accessibility to neighborhood grocery stores. So that's the first thing. Let's see if we can't find ways to develop where there are activity centers. Then there is this sense that what we are missing in Howard County, for the most part, is what's called the missing middle, which are smaller, diverse housing types. Duplexes, like the one you see here, quadplexes, which are 4 units in one building, Accessory dwelling units, which were discussed earlier when Fran was presenting. An accessory dwelling unit is a unit, a small size unit that's built on the property where there is already a larger unit, but there is land available to build the accessory dwelling unit. Frequently, accessory dwelling units are for members of the family, but there are ways in which they can be built which ensure design compatibility and ensure that one of the two units on the property is occupied by the person that owns the property. So it could be appropriate for someone who wants to age in place. They no longer need the larger house. They build an accessory dwelling unit, move into it, and rent the larger house to either somebody in their family or to someone else, a family that wants to move into the community, a family that maybe the people who work are people who work in the county, maybe they're teachers or firemen or policemen. In any case, we do not allow currently accessory dwelling units that are detached. We allow them if they are part of an existing unit. But if we could do this, it might, the suggestion is it could provide another maybe 90 or 100 units over time. I mean, we don't know how many, but it should be an option for people to be able to provide this as an option along with duplexes and quadplexes and other types of missing middle, because these are affordable units. These are units which for most people could actually be afforded within some of the limited incomes that people have. In addition, we want to expand the Housing Trust Fund. The Housing Trust Fund was created last year. It was recommended by the Housing Master Plan study, which took place 2 years over the pandemic period, and had 24 stakeholders from across the county. It made a number of recommendations, and one of the leading recommendations was the creating of a housing trust fund. Other jurisdictions, such as Baltimore City and Montgomery County, have them. And the idea was to provide resources that could be used to fund projects to improve housing for people of moderate or lower income, maybe in some cases to provide assistance with rent. In any case, it was funded at a level of $5 million. The first set of proposals will be opened up later this month. We expect it to be oversubscribed with more demand than the 5 million can meet. And so one thing that the coalition is recommending is that the amount in the trust fund should be doubled for $10 million in fiscal 24, so that we have resources that can continue to support creative projects that will help to expand housing and make it more affordable. In addition, we recommend finishing the Downtown Columbia plan, which when it's done, will provide roughly 900 units of much needed affordable housing. You may have heard about the first major project, which was Artist Flats. That's still in the process of putting the financing together. There is significantly one project, which is a senior project, which would be 100 units of affordable housing designated exclusively for seniors. And it would be at the Banneker Fire Station, the redeveloped Banneker Fire Station. It would be a combination of the fire station with senior housing above the fire station. And it's important that that project get built. Remember back on the slide that said we have in this county where we have 1,700 renters who are with incomes of either of under 26,000 for one or 30,000 for two. And for them, that 155 units doesn't go very far. 100 units is only scratching the surface, but we need every new unit we can get. So that's a project which we should in fact focus on and support. In addition, we need to set targets for accessible homes. As you heard in Vicky's very moving video, one of the issues that she faced and which many seniors face is how do they make their houses accessible for people who have physical problems. They're physically disabled or limited. And so they need to be able to live in a unit that gives them that accessibility. It's worth noting that in the units that the Housing Commission is going to be operating in the downtown Columbia area, they are ensuring that a percentage of them, and my belief is that we're talking about I think it's roughly 6 to 8 units will be accessible for persons with disabilities, but we need to have more. So we need to set a target of 10%. And this list that you see, which has a number of options, these are suggestions made by the HOCO by Design general plan recommendations. And you can see them. We'll just run through them, but these are things which could allow the development of additional units, primarily of missing middle and rental units. Even though we have a small amount of developable land, it's a question of how do we use the land we have? And one is repurpose existing buildings and sites, such as parking lots. We can raise height limits so that we can build higher buildings. We can set more realistic parking ratios, particularly when dealing with senior housing, where the number of parking spaces wouldn't have to be as many. We can use county land to co-develop public facilities and housing, like a fire station, like Banneker. We can provide incentives to develop housing in rural crossroads in Western Howard County, kind of the accessible to, these kinds of marketplace areas where people can walk and take advantage of retail needs like grocery stores. And we can approve on a limited basis expansion of the public service area. So these are all recommendations to be considered when talking about how do we increase that number of housing units to address that critical shortfall of 20,000 now and growing to about 50,000 if we don't do anything. And we do need to do something. And so, although it's easy to get lost in the numbers of income limits, renters, low-income renters, housing units, we don't want the general theme to get lost. The general theme is that we are a growing senior population. And by 2030, we will have 70,000 seniors living in Howard County, of which a large number will be over 85. And many, 7,000 women and 2,000 men, will be living alone. Our community isn't doing enough to provide overall housing. So with a shortfall, costs go up, as in the law of supply and demand. More housing is needed to keep costs under control. And we've shown all the recommendations that are being considered to do that. We have to have a target of at least 2,000 a year, and we must advocate for these affordable and accessible units to address this growing crisis. So the aging population is growing. There is a shortfall. We need to address the shortfall, and we need to find ways to do that by adopting these various recommendations to provide more units and reduce the cost of affordable and accessible housing so that people in our age group can be assured that they will be able to stay in Howard County. They don't have to leave this county. They can age here gracefully and with respect and dignity. And so we urge everyone to think about how they can make a contribution in advocating to their council person or to others to be able to make this possible in our county.
Thanks so much, Paul. It's just so clear, as always, and sounds so simple. But I want to point out that all of those proposals that Paul mentioned are just that. They're proposals. And it's going to take a political decision, or probably a series of political decisions by the county council this year to determine whether those proposals actually come to fruition. And I'll remind you that we're living under previous policy decisions that were also political decisions that set housing production limits below the needs of our community in the face of all of this continued healthy job growth, where we're attracting workers to the community. We're growing. We can't stop it. We're growing. We're going to let employers continue to attract jobs and open businesses, and people are attracted here. Yet we're not producing enough housing, which creates that scarcity situation and drives the prices up, which is particularly harmful for people who earn moderate to lower income. So these proposals are going to be viewed by the county council, reviewed by the county council, and voted on this year. And if we want to get something done, if we want to solve the crisis for seniors, seniors have to get involved. And it's as simple as that. The county council notices when seniors are behind a campaign because seniors vote. And so they listen. They listen to seniors. And so I've just, you don't have to worry about the detail here, but over the next 6 months, there are a series of public meetings, hearings, opportunities to provide testimony, to sign petitions, to call your council member, to write letters, and to show up at these public hearings so that the elected leaders understand that you care, that you want things to change, that you want some of these policies implemented that Paul mentioned. And so the request here tonight is, first of all, thank you for listening to the presentations tonight. We hope that you'll get involved, having heard from Fran and from Paul about the challenges in Howard County, this growing, ever-growing demographic of seniors in our community, a significant number of whom are vulnerable and are going to become more vulnerable because of this dysfunctional housing market that we have in our community. So we urge you to get involved. We urge you to join Age-Friendly Housing, join the Housing Affordability Coalition, so we can let you know what's happening when those hearings are coming up, when there's a vote, when there's an opportunity to add your name to a petition or send an email, because that will be the right time when the council is thinking about a particular issue that they're going to consider. We'll keep you informed, and we hope that you will get involved. We'll give you some information here in a bit about how to do that. And please spread the word about what both of these organizations are trying to do to bring positive, needed change to our community. So here's some information about the two organizations.
Alice Solotaro, welcome. What might you have to share?
Well, thank you very much, Paul, because now I know that I am an extra low-income senior renter. My rent is almost 65% of my income, and that is extremely difficult on my monthly income. Unfortunately, Howard County is not age-friendly. If you are an extra low-income senior, this is a burgeoning emergency that no one is really addressing, the powers that be. I am a widow and the bereaved mother of my only child. I don't have anybody close by, but I can tell you what happens when your spouse passes away. Your monthly income immediately is cut pretty much in half. And you start looking around for a unit that you can afford in Howard County, and there are none. And it is frightening. And I am very insecure, as are many of my neighbors. We live in a tax credit senior building. And what do you do when your little financial cushion runs out?
Thanks, Phyllis. Thanks so very much. These are the kinds of stories that we hope get shared with council members. One way or another, we will provide opportunity to do that, because they listen to our seniors. Regina, you have your hand up.
Yes, I did. I wanted to ask Paul to clarify about over in Meriwether, that whether or not, I just want to be sure that the affordable housing is or is not accessible housing over in Meriwether.
In the Meriwether district, I believe the answer is there are some accessible units, and I believe they will be in the Juniper building, I believe. I can't be assured of the building, but yes. And in fact, Regina, you were very good about raising before the commission the issue about ensuring that we provide accessible units. And the initial units that were controlled by the Housing Commission, that just as a bit of background, the Housing Commission has the right to lease essentially forever, in perpetuity, as long as the buildings are there, a certain percentage of units in the building. And that varies between 8 and 12%, depending upon certain circumstances. But the initial group of units that were leased by the Housing Commission did not include accessible units. And that was really, I think, a very unfortunate oversight. And so the effort has been made to correct that. And as new units are coming online, some of them will be accessible. I don't remember the exact number. I think in the current building, it may be about a half a dozen, but yes, there will be some accessible units in the newer buildings.
Okay, so what I understand is that there won't be any accessible ones in Juniper. They're trying to make them accessible in Marlowe. But my question still is, and my concern still is that why are they using the word accessible and not necessarily ADA compliant? Because my issue has always been, I need a roll-in shower. And they're not making units with roll-in showers. So,
Regina, we actually have that question, and we'll be pointing out what accessible should really mean.
thank you.
If I could just,
Right, sure.
I'll just say that one of the recommendations in the action plan for age-friendly is to modify the universal guidelines that are used by our developers. They are more than, is it 15 or 25 years old? When they were developed, the oldest seniors were like in their 50s.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a agreement between developers and the county, and it needs to be redone. You need a 5x5 turning space and a wide roll-in shower. I know exactly what you're saying. And one of the recommendations, and the coalition is also working on it.
Well, and that clearly is something that should be done with our own laws here in Howard County. That's a very good point, Fran. You're right. And I do want to underscore something that Phyllis said. I don't want to lose it, because when we talk about 6,700 seniors and we talk about 1,700 being at the very low income, and there are we talk about the 3,000 being at limited income, what people tend to forget is, yes, these people are housed in rental units, but Phyllis points out so graphically and dramatically, it doesn't do you much good if you are housing insecure, because you are paying almost 2/3 of your income for rent. So housing not only has to be decent and quality and safe, but it needs to provide an affordable standard which can allow you to live a life that gives you security for all of the needs you have. And so your story is a very important one, Phyllis, that we need to make sure it gets told.
And there's a question in here that I can manage to remain in my home if I can get breaks on repairs needed. What do you suggest? I'll let others weigh in, but the Department of Housing and Community Development has funding available for homeowners to repair their homes. They are no interest loans, as I recall, that don't have to be paid back until the house is sold. I think that's accurate. But when we send out, if we send out, we'll send out the information and a contact there at our Department of Housing and Community Development.
The other resource is Rebuilding Together Howard County. That used to be a 1 day a year mass event by volunteers, usually about 20 or 25 homes in Howard County would have some work done on them each April, and they are now working year round and have a crew. So Rebuilding Together Howard County, there are some eligibility requirements, but I encourage you to talk to them.
And Paul or Dana, I believe one of the priorities in the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund that we were alluding to before, that's one of the areas for helping to rehab homes. that is eligible. Whether anybody applies to
Mm.
get funding to do that, I'm not sure, but that's just to underscore the importance of that housing trust fund, that it can make some of these things happen.
Yes, I
But
think.
to my knowledge, none of the money has been set aside as grants to people for rent. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The applications are going in now, and I think by early May, we'll know what has been funded.
Rent subsidy is again another priority area in that the notice of funding availability, whether anybody chooses to apply for that purpose, we have remains to be seen.
But that's not for an individual to apply. It has to be a group. Am I correct?
Correct. That would be for a
An organization.
developers, nonprofit. Yes. Yeah. Right, Fran. All right.
Okay. We're a couple minutes after the hour. Jackie?
I just would like to say thank you to each of you. A lot of new faces and names, which always delights us, that we feel like we're reaching out. And I'm just going to do a plug for both Age Friendly Howard and for the coalition, that if you found this interesting and that you stay engaged with us, but also reach out to your friends, your neighbors, your family. We need all the voices that we can get. And we need you all to be our outreach mechanisms and bring more people to the table. And for that, we would appreciate it. And Dana, anything? Fran, anything on behalf of Age Friendly? Okay. All right. Well, everyone have a good rest of your evening. Enjoy the nice weather. So I'll go out and get some exercise tomorrow.